What's up, everyone? Welcome to the video. We are here talking NFL DFS for week 3 of the NFL season over on DraftKings. First 2 weeks of NFL have been kind to me. Hopefully they've been to you as well. If they haven't, well, hopefully we can turn things around. But this slate is looking pretty fun. I wouldn't say there's a ton of obvious chalk on this one, which I like because it makes tournaments a lot more fun. So we'll be breaking it all down, going over some of my favorite plays at each position. Then we'll run the optimizer at the end to see who's popping the most as of right now on Friday afternoon. And as always, if this is your first time here, my name is Pennell. I break down NASCAR and NFL DFS each and every single week on this channel. And you can also find me over on Stochastic sometimes doing some live before lock shows and writing articles over on the website if you ever want to check those out. And if you do end up enjoying today's free content, the only thing I ask in return, if you can just leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and hit that bell so you get notified whenever I post new content. And feel free to leave a comment down below saying whatever you want to say because you're in control of yourself. And don't forget to check out the sponsor of the show, DST Picks, because they do make these videos possible. And to be honest, I'd still make the videos either way. They just make it a little bit easier on myself. But if you're a new user over on the website, you can use promo code CPEN to get an instant deposit match bonus up to $100 using the link down below in the description. Or you can head to prizepicks.com and take advantage of the awesome deals they have going on. Very fun website. I play on it each and every single week. But I think that'll be it for the plug. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. And as always, we will start with the quarterback position. And also, if you do want access to the sheet that I'm previewing for free over on YouTube to you as of right now, link is down below in the description for that. It's got the entire player pool on it, projections for all players, the optimizer, ownership projections, my own personal cheat sheet, all the data you'd ever need, color coded nice and neat, so it's quite easy to follow. And we also have the NBA starting soon. We have baseball going on and NASCAR as of right now. So tons of content getting posted each and every single week and day. And it's the end of the month, so if you do sign up, you can get this last week for free as long as you signed up for October. But anyway, Josh Allen, the most expensive quarterback on both sites, but there really should be no question about that. The guy is the best fantasy quarterback in the NFL, one of the best talents in the entire league. 29-point implied team total here for the Buffalo Bills, which is second on the slate, only behind the Minnesota Vikings as of right now. 52.5 point over under and a 5.5 point spread. We just saw Lamar Jackson put up nearly 50 fantasy points versus this defense. And while I don't think Miami is going to be the worst defense in the NFL this year, it definitely looks beatable. I mean, the Bills are going to be an unstoppable offense this season. It's just really hard to be able to limit what Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen can do together. Also adding guys like Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, Jamison Crowder. It's just a tough offense to stop, especially when Josh Allen's playing as good as he is. And through 2 weeks this year, we're dealing with some very small sample sizes, but over 300 yards passing, 3.5 passing touchdowns, and 8.9 yards per attempt with a near 86% completion percentage. And also adding the fact that he has rushing upside, does have a rushing touchdown already this season. It's hard to bet against the guy. So if you have the money for Josh Allen, by all means, get some exposure here. It's, again, very small sample sizes, but Miami is allowing the second most points per game to fantasy quarterbacks, and they're second to last DVOA-wise versus the pass, and allowing nearly 60 rushing yards per game, although Lamar Jackson had a big part of that. But loving Josh Allen here. Don't think he's a must-play in cash games at his price point, but if you have the money for him, I really like getting Josh Allen, and it's pretty easy to stack him up. And obviously there's tons of run back options with Miami, with Gesicki, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. So pretty easy game to stack. Just kind of have to spend up a little bit, but there's enough value on the slate to make it work. Patrick Mahomes, $7,900. Not really expecting a ton of ownership on Mahomes because people are going to flock to Josh Allen. People will play Jalen Hurts because he's cheaper and has rushing upside. So we actually might get Patrick Mahomes in a bit of an overlooked spot here versus Indy. And we just saw the Jaguars put up 24 versus these guys. I think the Chiefs have the capabilities of putting up 30 plus in this game. They do have a 28-point implied team total, which is only one less point than the Buffalo Bills. But I do expect Mahomes to have much lower ownership. So this could be a nice pivot spot in tournaments. And Mahomes has been great this year as well, averaging nearly as many yards per game as Josh Allen. Both have 3.5 passing touchdowns per game, 8 yards per attempt. He just doesn't really offer the rushing upside that Josh Allen has, but he can get the job done through the air, and he's mobile enough to get rushing touchdowns as well. I like the spot versus the Colts on the road, so I think he's in a great tournament spot here. Obviously wouldn't go there in cash games though. I think if you're playing cash games, Jalen Hurts is going to be your best bet this week. $7,600, a 27-point implied team total, 6.5 point spread on the road in Washington. And as I always say, I don't really play Jalen Hurts because of the passing upside. I play him for what he can do on the ground, as he's averaging 71 yards per game on the ground so far this season and 1.5 rushing touchdowns per game as well, which I don't think is sustainable, but as of right now, he's absolutely killing it. But he was not bad at all through the air on Monday night. 300 passing yards in that game, only had 1 touchdown, But hey, still had a great game through the air. 86% completion percentage this season with a 9.1 yards per attempt rating, which is actually better than Josh Allen. He doesn't throw the ball quite as much, so the sample size is smaller, but he's got good weapons to get the ball to. Dallas Goedert, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown's been a huge addition to that offense. So if you're playing cash games, he's probably your safest option here. And then dropping down to the 6K range, we have a few pocket passers here. Can't really expect too much in the rushing department. But we have Kirk Cousins at nearly $7,000. It feels expensive, especially if you watched the game on Monday night. He did not look impressive whatsoever. But people are going to stack this game up, and people are going to play Vikings. They have the highest implied team total on the slate at 29.25 as of right now. They're playing at home. We have 52.5 point over-under, which is the exact same as this Miami and Buffalo game, which people are going to play as well. So points are going to be scored in this one. It just does not feel good to play Kirk Cousins. I think he's going to be a little bit higher owned than he should. So if I'm playing in a 3-max, I might let other people chase that. I just think that people are going to play Justin Jefferson. They're going to run back with Amon-Ra St. Brown. They might throw in Kirk Cousins at the quarterback position. I don't know. I just don't want to pay that much for Kirk Cousins. I can get similar upside with Joe Burrow. I can get similar upside with Matthew Stafford, if not better upside. I feel like I can trust their arms a little bit more, and they have great weapons to get the ball too as well. So I might just let other people play Kirk Cousins, but I did think he was worth talking about on this one. Then we have Joe Burrow at $6,600. The Bengals have not looked good at all so far this year, but they get a nice soft spot here versus the Jets. Should be a good bounce back opportunity. I know they should have beat the Dallas Cowboys with the backup quarterback, but unfortunately they could not get the job done here. Now, I personally prefer Joe Mixon in this game, and I think a lot of people will as well, but I think Burrow might go a little bit overlooked, especially with how they played so far this year. So I like getting to the passing attack in tournaments a little bit. He's thrown the ball 40 times per game so far through 2 weeks. He's got obviously elite weapons in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So I think this is a good bounce back spot for tournaments. So I'll try to get some exposure of Joe Burrow. If you don't have Joe Mixon in your lab, it makes sense to get exposure to the passing attack, because I do think the Bengals will be able to put up some points in this one. Matthew Stafford at $6,500. If you're using Stafford, you usually want to pair him up with Cooper Kupp. You could also throw in Allen Robinson. I believe he had the goal line touchdown. I think he had another touchdown that got called back. I can't remember if that stood or not. But at $6,500, Stafford's always going to have upside. 26-point implied team total on the road in Arizona. Their defense has not looked great so far. I think we all expected a little bit more things from Derek Carr last week. Unfortunately, just didn't get a ton of touchdowns mixed in there. Devontae Adams really struggled as well. But I mean, $6,500 is not a bad spot here for Stafford versus the Arizona Cardinals, who are allowing the third most points per game to the quarterback position this year and about 300 passing yards per game, in addition to being 28th DVA versus the pass. We're dealing with some very small sample sizes here, but we did see Patrick Mahomes absolutely carve this defense up. And I'm not calling Matthew Stafford Patrick Mahomes, but the Rams offense is still pretty good, and they got Cooper Kupp to get the ball too, could absolutely torch this defense. And moving on to the running back position, not many great options this week, only a handful of guys, but to be honest, I'm really dwindling on the running back position. Even in week 1, week 2, I was like, this is a wide receivers league. They're unstoppable. I mean, you cannot guard these elite wide receivers, and we have very few good running backs. So if you can just get me a guy that plays a good chunk of the snaps, has a chance to catch some passes, or if you're just an extremely good matchup, I'll take it. But I used to be a running back guy first, but I'm really starting to trend towards just really getting the wide receivers I want in my lineup. It's been a bit of a shift this year, but the NFL is changing, and this is definitely a passing league, and these top tier wide receivers are way too good. Like, they cannot be stopped. But anyway, we'll start top here with Dalvin Cook, $7,900. It's a good get right spot for Cook. I know if you drafted him in fantasy this year, you haven't been too excited about it, but he checks about every single box for me here. He gets the chunk of the volume. It's a high over-under, and your 30-point implied team total for the Vikings. They're 6-point favorites at home. And I'm obviously not too concerned about the Lions' defense. They've been bad the past few seasons, and we're pretty much seeing more of the same this year as well. To start, Joe Mixon, $7,600 should be a good spot for the Bengals here versus the Jets. Their run defense hasn't been great the past couple of seasons. 6-point favorites on the road here. If Joe Mixon can just get a touchdown, that would be great, because he's getting all the volume he can handle. 23 carries per game, and also 6 targets and 5 catches, which is really pleasant surprise. I wasn't really expecting Mixon to be using the passing game this much, but it's been really nice to see. It's just he's not efficient with his touches at all. Only 3 yards per carry, which really equates to 270 rushing yards per game, even though he's getting you 20-plus carries. But the passing work has been awesome from Joe Mixon, so if that keeps up, that'd be great. It's just they keep finding themselves trailing in games. So if they are playing with the lead, maybe we can see those efficiency numbers go up a little bit. Hopefully, we'll see though. But if he can just get us a touchdown, that would be great. I love the volume. That's never going to be an issue for Mixon. It's just falling into the end zone is what really separates him from being an okay day to a really good day for DFS. But wouldn't be surprised if we finally see him in the box this weekend. DeAndre Swift, $7,200. He is the complete opposite of Joe Mixon. Doesn't get a ton of volume, but he's hyper efficient and he's just really talented. Looks awesome on the field. He's actually at 10 yards per carry this year, which is insane. Obviously, that's not sustainable. He's not going to rip off a 50-yard run each and every single week, but he has been really good with the touches he is getting. And I know he didn't play a ton last week, but he was nursing the ankle injury. Seems like he's going to be a lot better to go this weekend, so I think we at least see some volume uptick. But through 2 weeks, 10 rushing attempts per game and 4 targets, but I assume we're going to see more of a workload. But averaging 100 rushing yards per game, 31 receiving yards, and he's been good at scoring touchdowns so far. So I think DeAndre Swift's a great tournament play. Don't think a ton of people will go there, but I really like any exposure to this game. 52.5-point over-under. The line should be trailing, so maybe we get some dump offs from Swift. It's just really annoying seeing Jamal Williams come in the game and steal the touchdowns when Swift gets them all the way down the field. So you have to mentally prepare for that to happen, and once you do, if he has a little bit better, because it really sucks at first. And then we have the bottom 3 guys here who I think are going to be the most popular combinations in cash games. And I am expecting Fournette to be, might not be the most popular, but I think he's going to be a top 2 popular back. I think it's going to be very close between him and David Montgomery, but Leonard Fournette, hard not to like him here. There is nobody left in this Tampa offense, especially with Mike Evans getting suspended for this game. So it's pretty much just Uncle Lenny. We'll see who actually suits up at the wide receiver position this week, but Fournette's going to get all the work he can handle. He basically plays all the snaps. He's going to get you all the touches, but like Joe Mixon, just hasn't been incredibly efficient, although been a little bit better at 4.3 yards per carry, only 3 targets per game. But if we can get 20 plus carries out of running back with Tom Brady as their quarterback, and if we can get a handful of targets, that's a good enough usage for me at $6,500. Plus the Packers run defense isn't that great. They are 30th DVA versus the run, so I think Fournette's in a great get right spot here. And he did tweet out, he apologizes for no touchdowns to his fantasy owners, so maybe he can finally get us one. And then David Montgomery, $5,900. If Fournette's not the highest on running back, I think it's because David Montgomery is. He's just really cheap. It's a good spot versus Houston. They've been terrible versus running backs the past couple of seasons, and they were awful last year, and they're allowing 143 rushing yards per game to running back again this season, allowing the 5th most points per game to the running back position, or actually I think 6th, 25th DVA versus the run. And Monty this year, the volume looks good, averaging 16 carries per game and 3 targets, and that equals to a 21% target share in this offense. The Bears do not throw the ball at all. They're going to run the ball here, and it's a good spot on the ground versus Houston, so it makes a ton of sense to like him. He's at home, 2.5-point favorite. I would be kind of shocked if Montgomery doesn't hit value here at this price point, so while he's going to be very chalky at a position where there's not that many great plays, if we can get one below 6K, I like it a lot. Then Josh Jacobs, $5,400. I'll be honest, I hate Josh Jacobs. I never play the guy, but I do think he's going to be kind of popular this week just because of the price point, and Tennessee looks awful this year. They're only 2-point favorites. I think they kind of beat that spread there. I don't really see how Tennessee is going to be only a 2-point dog. I know they're playing at home, but I think the Raiders are a much better team than the Titans. I just really low on that team in general this year. The only problem with Jacobs is that he just does not get any involvement in the passing game, averaging 1 target per game this year, which equates to a 2.7% target share. 14.5 carries, not amazing with his efficiency, only 4.3 yards per carry and 63 rushing yards. If he doesn't score, you're probably not going to be happy, but if he does score, he's a fine play, but he's only $5,400, so if you're looking for a third running back to use in cash games, I think Jacobs is fine. It's just on a PPR slate DraftKings, it just makes it a little bit tougher. And moving on to the wide receiver position, tons of good plays as always. Wide receiver is just so deep, and as I always say, I'm not going to break down each and every single player here. That would take way too long. It really comes down to who am I using a quarterback, who am I stacking up, what games am I looking at, or who are my run back options with a given stack. So it really comes down to if I'm using Matthew Stafford, I'm probably playing Cooper Kupp. I know he's extremely expensive, but I'm not scared of the Arizona defense. We know the volume's going to be there. Actually, I can move these to the target shares for you guys just because I'm not going to hit on them individually, just so you can look on the screen. Justin Jefferson's one of the biggest talents in the NFL. If you're using Kirk Cousins, you have to play Justin Jefferson. If you were using Kirk Cousins without Justin Jefferson, the stars have to align for Adam Thielen to have a nuclear game without Justin Jefferson really doing much, which I would highly doubt, or Irv Smith. So if you're using Cousins, you basically have to pair him with Justin Jefferson. I think Adams is in a good bounce back game here after kind of failing as the chalk last week, facing off versus Tennessee, who just got absolutely torched by Stephon Diggs. If you were using Joe Burrow, you have to use at least one of these guys with Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. I love the price point on T. Higgins. Only averaging 5.5 targets per game this year through 2 weeks, but did get hurt in the first game. Jamar Chase doing Jamar Chase things this year. Didn't really have a huge game last week, but again, if you were using Burrow, you need some of his pass catching options with him. You don't necessarily have to run it back with the Jets guy. It's just not a great offense in general. You could look at Elijah Moore or a Corey Davis, but I don't think you have to run it back. Stephon Diggs, he's going to be one of the more popular plays in the entire slate. Went nuclear on Monday night. Everyone saw that game. And if you're using Josh Allen, maybe you can get away with it by just using Gabe Davis, but it's not the smartest choice in my opinion. You really should be using a guy like Stephon Diggs with him. I mean, he's averaging 11 targets per game this year, 2 touchdowns, had 3 touchdowns on Monday night. He's a machine. He's underpriced. I think Diggs should be closer to $9,000, and the fact that he's $7,700 screams value to me. In perfect correlation here, if you are stacking the Bills, running it back with a guy like Tyreek Hill at $7,600 who went nuclear versus the Ravens secondary, or a Jalen Waddle at $6,800, makes perfect sense to me. Both these guys have been great through 2 weeks this year. So if you are stacking the Bills up, or if you're stacking Miami, it just works either way. You're either running it back with Diggs or running it back with one of these Dolphins. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a guy I think you can use as a one-off in cash games. I also think you can use Diggs as a one-off in cash games. But St. Brown, he's been a machine. He gets either 8 catches per game or a touchdown every single week, 33% target share in the season, 12 targets per game, averaging 30 fantasy points. I don't see a reason not to like Amon-Ra. I know he's on the Lions, so it never feels too great. I know the price is getting up there, but the guy's legit. He's really good, and we know he's going to get guaranteed volume. Christian Kirk has been a really nice surprise on the Jaguars this year. He's averaging nearly 100 yards per game through 2 weeks. And I think it's fair to say that the Jaguars should be trailing in this one, so Kirk should get plenty of volume once again. Jacoby Myers is another guy that I think is fine in cash games at $5,000. I know it's never fun to play a Patriot, but he gets the targets, he gets the volume, and near 30% target share on the season. I know it's not too pretty. It's never really fun to have Mac Jones throwing you the football, but the Ravens secondary got absolutely torched last week by Tua. Not expecting that to happen here for the Patriots, but this is a beatable defense, and Jacoby Myers will get the volume. Russell Gage, we will have to see who suits up and who doesn't for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But obviously Mike Evans is suspended. We had Chris Godwin and Julio Jones DNP on Wednesday or Thursday, I believe. So, and I know Russell Gage was also limited in practice as well, but if Russell Gage is the only guy that suits up, he's $4,700. I mean, doesn't have to do too much to pay out value here, so I do think he'd be a viable play. Might not be pretty. This Tampa Bay offense obviously isn't amazing right now. They only have a 21.5 implied team total. Playing at home though versus Green Bay, if he just gets his 5+ targets and he comes down with a good chunk of them, maybe he gets into the end zone, it's a fine play at $4,700. And Jahan Dotson, $4,600. He's become like my favorite tournament wide receiver for cheap the past couple of weeks. I played him in week 1. He's a little bit higher on there, but he had 2 touchdowns, ended up being a great play. But then last week, I got him at 3 or 4% owned in the $75 3 max. And once again, he had a pretty good day. I know he's not getting a ton of volume, under a 12% target share and 4.5 targets per game, but he's been a touchdown scoring machine, and he's also has some big play upside with a 14.4 ADOT. So I think he's going to go low owned again. I would expect him to have low ownership than guys like Jacoby Myers and Russell Gage. So I do think that makes him a pretty good tournament play because the Washington Commanders offense, they had to throw the ball out in the second half, it seems like, and Carson Wentz has been able to find him. And then I almost forgot to put Curtis Samuel on here. I was just really kind of focusing on Jahan Dotson being lower owned. I think Curtis Samuel does pick up some ownership this week, and I think he's a fine cash game play. His volume's been a lot more consistent. 9 targets per game on 7.5 catches, near 24% target share. Doesn't really get down the field or anything, only a 3.3 ADOT, but that does make him fine on a PPR site like DraftKings. But I am expecting higher ownership, so that's why I like to pivot to Dotson in tournaments. And moving on to tight ends, not really a loaded position this week, but up top we do have Travis Kelce. And if you are using Patrick Mahomes, you are stacking the Chiefs. Really hard for me to leave off Kelce. Unfortunately, we're not getting the free price tag that he was in week 1, where he was only $6,600 for some reason. Didn't have a huge game versus the Chargers on Thursday night, but almost got into the end zone before getting body slammed by Derwin James. But he's still having some solid numbers this year with 30% market share of the team's air yards, 22% target share, 8 targets, nearly 90 receiving yards per game. So Kelce, probably going to keep Kelceing. Don't really see an issue here with the Colts defense. And again, if you are using Patrick Mahomes, makes sense to get his number 1 pass catcher, because good luck figuring out what wide receiver you should play if you're playing like in a single entry or a 3 max. Dallas Goedert at $4,700. You don't have to stack with Jalen Hurts. He's one of those quarterbacks you can play naked with the rushing upside, but he would definitely be one of the guys I'd like to get to, at least, especially at a position where there's not that many great plays. But only seen 4.5 targets per game, only 16% target share, but 71 yards per game. So he has been at least productive with the limited targets that he is getting. Tyler Higbee's been a target machine, 9 targets per game on a 26% target share. He's got some pretty good involvement in this offense. and not scared about the Cardinals defense. I think Higbee is certainly in play at that price point. TJ Hawkinson, if you're looking just to get some exposure to this game, he hasn't been crazy this year or anything. He's getting good volume at 7 targets per game with a near 20% target share, but that's only equaling out to 3.5 catches and 32 receiving yards per game. So if he's not catching a touchdown, which he hasn't yet this year, they're probably not going to be too happy with the production, because I feel like you can get just about the same thing here with Irv Smith at $3,100. You had some pretty good involvement last week's game where he saw 8 targets and got into the end zone. Had a pretty pedestrian week 1, obviously, but a 13% target share at this price point and what should be a high scoring game. If he just falls into the end zone, you'll be happy at $3,100. He doesn't even have to score though. If he can just get you like 3 to 5 catches with 20 plus yards, it's not terrible at the price point. And moving on to defense, never really spend top dollar for a defense ever. If they get a lucky touchdown, so be it. I always scroll down to the bottom and look for the first viable defense. I think that's usually the best way to go about it. So I'm not playing the Colts versus the Chiefs, not playing the Lions in that game, definitely not playing the Dolphins. The Commanders, maybe, but they're 6.5-point dogs here. The most viable defense that first comes up looks like the Raiders, in my opinion. I know they're on the road, but they're 2-point favorites with the lowest implied team total we've seen yet. So the Raiders are definitely on my radar. The Panthers versus Jameis Winston at home, a really low total here, 41. They are 2.5-point dogs, but it's still a low total. Texans, I'll probably have a lot of David Montgomery, so that wouldn't make a ton of sense. So it really just looks like the Raiders and the Panthers look the most viable as of right now. I mean, obviously, if you want to play some of these expensive defenses, you can. There are much better spots, but I am not sacrificing, say, dropping down from a Justin Jefferson to a lower level wide receiver just to fit in a defense I want. That makes no sense to me because defenses are incredibly unpredictable. Like I said earlier, I do want to run the optimizer here to see who is popping up the most. It's Friday, so these are going to change a little bit, but just going to run 150 here with no settings, no groups, no randomness, just to see who projections like the most. And it looks like we got the 152 crunch here, so we're just going to pull up the players tab, and yeah, lots of David Montgomery, lots of Higbee, lots of Russell Gage, although that could always change. Cup, yeah, I mean, not really surprised at who's popping at the moment. Obviously, if you were building 150 lineups, you'd have to plan out these exposures because I'm never going to go that heavy on players, and you're going to set up your groups and settings, but as of right now, it doesn't look too far off, although I was not expecting to see Skowronek and Marcus Mariota pop like that, and I'm not going to play those two guys, just fair warning. With that being said, that's all I got for you all this week. Hopefully you found this helpful in any way possible, and if you did, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. If you are brand new, don't forget to check out the extra content over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. And sponsor the show Prize Picks. Use promo code CPEN, and it helps us both out. But wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you all next time.